Hello, this is a talk from Knaphill Baptist Church and I'm Hetty. In a group in church, we read passages from the Bible on Zoom, of course. And the passages which really struck me this week were the ones we read from the book of Deuteronomy. Now, the book of Deuteronomy is the 5th book in the Bible, and it's addressed to the people of Israel before they enter the promised land. And Moses gives them all sorts of instructions how to live as a people who love God. And God asks them to love him and also to love other people, to love their neighbors. And what struck me when we read a passage about this theme is that on the one hand, the text said that God is really the highest God, Lord of Lords, the great God, mighty and awesome. And then also he defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. And you can find that in chapter 10 of Deuteronomy 11. Chapter 10, verses 17 and 18. And God, who is a great God, and he says, your God is God of gods and Lord of lords. He's mighty. He's concerned about the details of those who are in need. They need food and they need clothing. And those in need in those days of the Bible were the widows, for instance, or the orphans, or the foreigners. And these were vulnerable groups. But there are a lot of rules that God gives to care for those people and not to ignore them. And in verse 19 of Deuteronomy chapter 10, Moses says, you are to love those who are foreigners, for you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt. So, Israel, you had the experience of being slaves in Egypt. You were foreigners there, and because you know how that is, treat foreigners with respect, because you yourself wanted to be treated with respect, and that was not done in Egypt at all. So you know how you can suffer as a foreigner. So treat foreigners with respect and love them. And in Deuteronomy 24, God gives some more instructions through the person of Moses. For instance, do not take advantage of a hired worker who is poor and needy, whether that worker is a fellow Israelite or a foreigner residing in one of your towns. Pay them their wages each day before sunset, because they are poor and are counting on it. And also, do not deprive the foreigner or the fatherless of justice, or take the cloak of the widow as a pledge. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. That is why I command you to do this. And you can find it in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 14, 15, 17, 18. All very practical rules that the great God, mighty God, gives to us as people to treat other people with respect, and especially the vulnerable in society. And when I think of practically helping people, I always think of my own mother. And she was very practical. And I remember that one day there was a lady who rang the bell, and she knew that this lady was coming and that she was in need, that she had a family to feed and she didn't have food enough. And my mother had said to her, now come to my house and take the pram with you, but an empty pram, so that I can fill it with food without anybody noticing it. So this lady, this mother of a large family actually, came with an empty pram. My mother opened all the cupboards in the kitchen and took out bread, tea, coffee, sugar, whatever, and filled the empty pram. And this woman could feed her own family again. My mother knew what it was to be hungry, because at the end of the war, Second World War, in 1944, there was famine, especially in the west of the Netherlands, and it was awful. And my mother was really, really hungry. And maybe it was because of that she realized what it is not to have food. And she was generous to give it to others. It was also part, definitely, of her life as a Christian, to be very practical and to give to others. And I think that's what God wants to do. I also find this rule so very relevant, actually, that if someone works for you, that you pay them their wages each day before sunset when they are poor. I meet people who are in need, and I even met a homeless person some time ago who said, I worked for somebody, but they didn't pay me, and now I'm here on the streets. So when it comes to social justice in our days, the Bible is very, very relevant. And there are a lot of things in the Bible which can help us in the current economic climate and would make a better world, actually. Well, when we come out of this COVID-19 crisis, we have learned certain things. We have learned that you can be very lonely without friends. And we have learned how important it is to keep in contact with other people. And I hope, because of that experience, just as the Israelites had experienced themselves what slavery was, that they lived in a different way. They lived in a way where they loved their neighbors and they loved their foreigners. And I hope when we come out of COVID-19, we learn some good lessons about how to treat other people and act in a just and righteous way. And I wish you a very good day. Thank you.